Hi, it's Kyle Coberline, a truck and RV sales consultant at Bluegrass International in Georgetown, Kentucky. Today I have a 2023 Renegade Valencia 38BB behind me. That stands for bunk bed. We're going to walk around the coach, talk about all its features. Hopefully I won't stumble too bad on all my words. Like always, please like, comment, subscribe on the videos, whatever social media platform you're on right now, and we'll get to going around this coach. Front end of that 23 Valencia. You can see the new Cabover bunk design for 2023. That glass that they've added up top, that is the same makeup as a windshield, just like on the front of the vehicle. So for durability, rocks and whatnot. So that's not an easily breakable glass. Underneath the hood, we've got it's a Cummins B 6.7. 360 horsepower, 800 foot-pound motor. Of course, you got a 12,000 pound towing capacity. You can see how easy it is to pull this hood. One of the big advantages to your Super C chassis or any truck chassis type style is just how easy it is to get to your engine compartment and to check fluids. You can see that you've got your windshield wiper fluid right here. You've got your air filter for the engine. You've got your translucent reservoir for your coolant. If there was any issues, it'd be easy to see, if there was a leak, or it just makes it a lot easier to service than something that's wedged up underneath of a bed. Power steering fluid, of course, your power steering gear. Fuel filter, which is also your fuel water separator. If there was water in that fuel, say you picked up some bad fuel somewhere, water's heavier than fuel, so you'd see that water sitting in the bottom of that glass there. So very easy to get to. I know a lot of people like to keep a very clean engine compartment, but I can't stress enough, it is not worth using pressure washers. Lightly spray off or clean with rag. A little dust isn't going to hurt anything. Pressure washing a bunch of electrical connections will. Of course, you can see your side view camera there on the hood. Behind that engine is an Allison 3000 series transmission. It comes standard on the Valencia. It comes standard in economy mode, which means it shifts 200 RPM earlier. There's a lot of confusion because the Allison 3000 series and the Verona LE comes standard in performance, which means it shifts 200 RPM later. So a lot of people argue that back and forth, but that's 100% true. So you got on Valencia product, it is economy is standard. You hit the mode button to switch it into performance. On the Verona LE, performance is standard. You hit the mode button to put it into economy. Of course, you've got tow hooks here in the front. So we'll walk down through the side here and just wrap all the way around. Of course, you got your other side view camera here on the fender. Your entry steps. Door's still locked. Your Gerard awning up top. That's that vent right there is for the exhaust for over your counter when you're cooking. There is a latching flap up there that you need to. It's manually locking, so it's nice to have a ladder, extendable ladder you can use to latch or unlatch that. If you keep it latched, if you're got in storage, and you want to keep critters out of there, or if you're not cooking a lot on your stove, you can leave it latched. But that's just to keep critters and stuff out in storage. You want to unlatch that when you're wanting to use it for exhaust. Of course, you got your Truma AquaGo instant hot water heater. Easy to get to and access. I've got the same system on my motorhome. It's really easy. You've got your power on and off, and of course, it's really easy to pull this lever down here. Kind of acts like a little chute. And so if you want to drain this water heater and for winterization purposes, it's extremely easy. Here's actually the piece that goes in there. You can see the screen filter. So that this pulls down, that slides in, and then when you push that yellow lever up, it shoves that in there to filter the water a little bit. I mean, just to, for major sediment. but very easy system to maintain for the most part. I mean, everything has a chance of failure, just that's the nature of the world if it's got moving parts and igniters. But overall, these systems are known to be very reliable. Here's our first storage bay. The doors are they're custom built in-house at Renegade. They are powder coated. They're steel boxes, carpeted line. This first box on this 38BB has the 3,000 watt inverter in it. You can see your MPPT solar charge controller in the back right there, and there's a little display up top that shows you the voltage coming in. So right now we're reading 14.3 volts. Of course, I can get back there and mess with it and see how many amps and whatnot are coming through. The nice thing about those dual latch points is, you know, as these seals compress over time, you can adjust these latches in a little bit to have a tighter seal. You'll know when your seals are like you need to adjust your doors, because you'll just see more water and dirt over the years. It kind of comes up. You can look at the you can kind of see here on the door, you got like a dirt line. You know, that's where the seal sits inside of here. But, you know, you'll see dirt kind of coming up along the door here, meaning that you're not getting as tight of a seal on the door. Easy to adjust. You've got your outside entertainment system, which has a sound bar. Love the sound bar stuff because, you know, they come out with something better, or you want a different sound bar, easy to switch out and replace. On the camp side of the coach or the passenger side, you know, it's mostly all your storage. You know, this is where you're spending most of your activities as far as being in your campsite or RV park. So they make this side for storage. Those are your slide locks, which when you do delivery, I'd much rather do that in person and show you how you'd use those if you so choose to do. And then that's an air line that's provided by Renegade. There's an air fitting in the battery compartment on the side. I'll show you where you can hook that up to inflate tires. Or, you know, if you want to use an airline, you can also do like small pool inflatables and stuff. You're not going to run any major like impact tools or anything. You got an outlet in that box, and you got a little plug that zips out if you want to run an extension cord to run something in your site. Of course, your Suburban furnace. I've actually got it running right now to give a little exercise and feel a nice little heat coming out of there for the exhaust. They do sell, and if you tell me you're buying an RV from me, I have no problem picking up the screens for you at the local store or getting them here and putting those on for you to keep mud daubers and stuff. It's a super easy modification and cheap as well. You've got another storage bay here. One thing Renegade started doing the last couple of years is they started cutting the boxes up underneath the frame rails just to give you a little bit deeper storage for your larger chairs and tables. Doors got tight fit, you gotta lean into them. Another storage bay. You've got your propane quick disconnect here, so if you want to hook up your outside grill. Now keep in mind that quick disconnect on that coach is already regulated, so if you have a Blackstone grill or any other propane grill, you'll need to get a special hose more than likely that's not regulated, because if you take regulated propane and regulate it again, you won't have enough pressure for the burner to ignite. You don't typically want to send high pressure propane over long distances, because then you have issues over time with oil residue building up in your lines. And then our rearmost bay here, once again, just storage on this coach. And you've got lights in there to illuminate the bays when it's dark outside. Looking at the back of this Valencia, you can see that it's a big piece of fiberglass, but Renegade does do it in two pieces. They've been doing that for a long time. That bottom cap is completely separate, and the reason they do that, if you got more than likely, if you got rear-ended, backed into something, you're gonna tear up that bottom corner. Well, that way you're not replacing this massive cap. You can just replace that bottom part of that fiberglass for repair. It makes it a lot cheaper, more efficient, and just quicker overall. Our Mudflap down here, which it still has the plastic film on it. We usually take that off at delivery, but that's a stainless Renegade RV logo down there. You've got your 7-way plug back here for trailer connection, and then that's a 12,000 pound hitch, 12,000 pound towing, 1,200 pound tongue. The little pipe sticking out of the end back here, that's the exhaust for your generator. The generator is actually running right now. I've got a lapel mic on, so you might be able to hear the generator running, but like, that's one of the beautiful things about how well Renegades are insulated. And you know, the super sandwich floor that's 9 inches thick. I mean, you've got 3-inch beams, 2-inch steel welded, space on the word. You got the beams, you got the 2-inch steel joists, and then you got double, of course, underneath all that, you've got a galvanized barrier, so bugs and moisture and just any of that stuff can't get into your coach. And then, of course, then you have your 3-inch beams, and then you have your 2-inch steel joists. On top of those joists, you've got double stacked 2x4s. And then on top of the double stacked 2x4s, you got 3/4 inch fir plywood. And then in the insulation in there is a high quality insulation. It's kind of like a wool material that's used in housing. It's got a high sound deadening factor, and of course insulated value. So I mean, all that absorbs a lot of sound. So the generator on the outside's not very loud, or inside the coach. I mean, inside the coach, the generator's super quiet, even though it's technically underneath your bedroom. My motorhome's on a 3500 chassis, it's a Winnebago View. At the time, Renegade didn't make a Cabover bunk on a smaller RV like I wanted, and that generator, I have a diesel generator. It is loud as hell inside my coach. I mean, I only use it when I have to, but it's nice to have it when I need it. Of course, you got 50 amp short cord, auto retract reel. That's your transfer switch and also your surge guard. So the coach is fully protected. Some people that are full-timers or on really long trips, they may still choose to use an additional surge guard at the post. Just in theory that, if you did get a lightning strike or some surge that knocked out your transfer switch or fried the circuitry in it, you're not gonna have any power to the coach, at least not coming from anything that's shore related or generator related. You'll be stuck with battery power more or less. So, for long-term, your full-time RVers or long-term trips, if you did it in theory, it's kind of extra precautionary. You fry your surge guard at the post, like those progressive industry deals that they make. I carry one, it works really well. You'd still be able to plug your cord in and still have power as you move along on your trip. And because, you fry that, heck, you're gonna have to get it shipped, and hopefully with all the supply chain issues we have today, it's available. You just never know. It's not a lot of fun to have inconveniences while you're traveling and enjoying yourself. But that's pretty extra precautionary. Of course, you got an 8,000 watt Onan generator, more than capable, running everything in the coach. Biggest thing on the generators is I do recommend running them for at least 30 minutes loaded every month. There's nothing worse on a diesel generator to let it just sit. Fuel, gel, it causes a lot of headache. Now the Valencia is on the Freightliner S2 chassis. It's a chassis specifically designed for RV use. One of the things they changed about that is they moved the fuel fill, the 100-gallon fuel tank is a single tank sandwiched between the rails, and then you've got a single fill port back here to fill your fuel. That's a lot more convenient for people that are more used to the automotive world when it comes to putting fuel in a vehicle versus having dual straddle fuel tanks like you do on the M2 chassis, where you got to, really the best way to do that is to pull into a truck aisle. I still pull this in a truck aisle, but when you have straddled tanks, you got to pull them into the truck aisle, and you've got hoses on both sides and you're filling both tanks at the same time. We could talk a whole about fuel systems on another day, but it's a lot simpler on the Valencia. It's just a single fill point, 100-gallon tank. Of course, you got your tires. Those are true truck tires. Those are Bridgestones. They're on a 22.5 wheel. This is basically a truck. So anytime you got issues as far as roadside service, something in your tire, leaking valve stem, think about this motorhome as a truck. Call your truck repair people, your roadside truck service people when it comes to having this work done. You call some guys that's used to working on pickup trucks or Mazda, I'm trying to think of some tiny Mazda car, like a Mazda Miata, I think was one of them. He might show up and not have a jack or the tools necessary to change these wheels. So always think this is a big truck and utilize big truck people for repair. Of course, that's your exhaust tip down there, which is for your main chassis engine. The reason it's shaped like that is, during active regen, when you're going down the road, get pushed close to 1,000 degrees, so it dissipates that exhaust to dissipate the heat. Here's your control bay. You got your sea level 2 tank monitoring system. So you got battery fresh, gray, and black. So your fresh level, your gray level, and your black level, you can see that in here. Of course, it's also tied into the multiplex system. You got your lever to go from tank fill to city water, very basic. Of course, access for cable TV, a black tank wash, so you can rinse down your black tank on occasion. Of course, your gray tank dump, your black tank dump, and you got low point drains and spigots. Your hose reel on this coach, this is an option that's ordered. Hose is in the way here. Your hose reel here is on an electric retract, so you just pull that out and you hook that up to whatever water source you're using to fill your tanks. Whatever water source you're using to fill your tanks, or to run off city water. Oh, and your stinky slinky down here. That's just a standard stinky slinky, or your sewer hose. You know, that's not something you could leave hooked up full time. That's something you would just use if you're trying to dump your tanks at a dump station. So, and what's really nice about Renegades as well is your black and your gray tank are in, you know, they got 12 volt heaters on them for cold weather, but also they're enclosed in boxes inside the coach. That's a huge advantage because, you know, the wind chill factor, you know, debris factor, you run over a tire tread at night, it's not bouncing up and ripping heaters off the bottom of your tanks or any kind of loose wiring hanging down. Cables for the mechanisms for opening up the gates. I mean, it's all enclosed, so that's super handy and convenient. You got a place where you can stick a hose down here if you want to hook up. I've seen where a customer, they put a really short hose on here and then put like another gate here, a simple gate here before you go down and out of the coach with a clear fitting on it so they can see if there's anything in it. You know, you're not going to get away from getting the poop dribble. I mean, it's always going to be like a little residue in your pipe. So it just depends. I mean, people come up with all kinds of cool things to do, extras on their coaches versus, you know, if it's modifications or using certain, you know, equipment or hoses or fittings or gates additional to what's provided on the coach. I mean, it's part of, kind of to me, it's one of the fun things about owning a motorhome is just all the fun things you come up with. Here's your other tank. Your gray and your black tank are 75 gallon. Your freshwater tank is 150 gallon. One of the common things that you'll see are an issue is sometimes people will get leaky gates. You know, it's kind of like a bicycle if anybody's a bike rider. You know, these cables stretch and get out of adjustment over time. You know, there's a little set screw right here that you can see, and all you got to do is back that set screw up a little bit and adjust your cable so that when you push in your handle, that your gate is actually getting pushed all the way closed and not left open. You know, just enough for like a little seepage, but over time, you know, that starts to build up inside your pipe. Of course, here you've got your propane tank. I've had people ask, well, how come there's no bottom in the tank? That's required by law. Propane is heavier than air, so whenever you release propane into the atmosphere, it doesn't go up. It actually sinks back into the ground where it came from. So that's actually a real nice benefit to propane and what makes it kind of safe, as long as it does not, you know, it's not getting trapped in an enclosed environment. So, you know, propane for the most part is pretty safe if it's got a place to go. And they, of course, add that yummy egg smell to it. So if there's a propane leak, you know it. And then you got propane sensors in the coach that would also let you know. But remote fill out here so that you just pull into, you know, your Tractor Supplies or Camping Worlds or wherever on the road. Or, you know, if the RV resorts have propane fill to get your tank filled. Propane gauge level is in the Firefly system inside. You can see that as well. And in the bay right behind the driver's door, you know, you've got on the left-hand side the black batteries. Those are your chassis batteries. That's what starts your main diesel engines and runs your 12 volt, you know, your headlights and radio and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, on the right-hand side is your coach batteries, which those are 3 100 amp hour lithium batteries. That is an upgraded option. This unit does have solar on it. It's 375 watt panels. You know, the nice thing about lithium, and those batteries are internally heated if you're a cold climate person. The nice thing about lithium is you get a much better depth of discharge out of them, so a little bit more use. You know, they're basically rated for 10 years. The branding they put on these is I can't see it. They're basically made in the USA by Battleborn. And then up there you can see your air fitting, where you can hook up your air hose. And then you've got, of course, a disconnect switch up here for the coach. And then you've got a Victron Energy battery monitor. And then working our way around the coach. So your fuel is in the rear, a 100-gallon tank, and then your DEF fill is up here in the front. The biggest thing about DEF, if you buy DEF in a bottle, don't ever use DEF that the seal has been broken. There's been stories of like Walmart where people buy DEF, they put it in their vehicle, they fill it back up with water, take it back in, return it. That does not surprise me. And another thing too is keeping it clean. DEF is highly corrosive. If you let it, you know, when you first do it and you spill it, you won't see anything, but you give it a day, it'll start kind of showing. It'll build up that crystally white. And of course, if crystals, we've seen on the truck world in our shop where crystals get down in that tank, then they can technically plug up a doser, cause a lot of emission issues, and that you're talking thousands of dollars in repairs to pull all that apart. Your block heater, you know, as far as the block heater for the main chassis engine, if you're going to be parked and it's the single digits, and you want to be extra careful about starting your motor, when you can use your block heater. You know, the modern engines today have intake heaters, so when you turn the key over, there's a grid heater inside of the air intake that heats up that air. And there's a wait to start lamp in the dash, so you don't want to turn the key over until that wait to start goes off, because it's heating that air inside of the air intake. And that's why we crack up. I've been working in the commercial truck sales industry for 16 years. You know, when this stuff kind of early started on, we had to remind guys, like, dude, do not spray ether into your air intake on some of these trucks. It's just a habit they'd had. Like, oh, spray a little ether to it. Well, they'll blow up in your face if you got a grid heater in there. It can. And then, of course, back up to the front here. You know, a lot of people are intimidated by driving these units. These are easier to drive than a Toyota Prius to me. I mean, you're basically a cube. So when you're looking in your mirror up here, I mean, you can see your back corner, and then you have massive mirrors. So you've got a big, huge flat glass, which is heated and power adjustable, and then you've got a convex mirror below. So that gives you that wide blind spot that you can see. So you really, using your mirrors, you can see a lot. I mean, and of course you can pop up your back camera full time, your backup camera full time on the dash, so you can see what traffic's coming up behind you. And where these are heavy vehicles, these are 30,000+ pounds. I mean, you pass another truck on the road, you're truck for truck. So I mean, you're not getting blown around. If you get into heavier winds, depending on the weather, I mean, it's just, they're not a bad drive. I would never assume that a female's not going to drive or a male's going to drive. I mean, I've seen it both ways. I've seen where a gentleman at 70-something years old doesn't care to drive it, but then his 70-something-year-old wife rocks it down the highway, you know. Or I've seen it all both ways. I mean, it's just, I think, if people are in the area, you're more than welcome to stop by and we can do a test drive. I mean, you don't have to be ready to buy a unit today or this year. If you just, you know, you're doing your shopping and exploring and trying to figure out what your plan is for retirement, or, you know, what you're going to upgrade in the next year or two, I mean, feel free to hit me up. I definitely try to schedule an appointment if you can. I mean, I'm in and out of the office visiting customers sometimes, vacation or whatever. But happy to let you guys drive a unit and just kind of get a feel for what they are. And here lately, I've been having some variety. So as far as Valencia, Verona, and Verona LE. So another good reason to call is just to make sure that we actually do have something available to drive before you make the trip. Of course, flush mounted windows on the outside. All your slides have awnings over them. If you're looking at a coach or anything and there's no awnings on the slides, that's like a dead giveaway. It's a cheap SOB. I mean, if they cut corners on the slide awnings, I'd walk away. Of course, on this unit, we've got the Winegard Connect system on the top, 2.0 for your Wi-Fi and your internet. Of course, today there's tons of internet options. You can see your two 15,000 BTU heat pumps on the roof. And then up there, you can also see the dome peak if the sun's not ruining the footage. But you can see the dome sticking up for the in-motion satellite. All the coaches are pre-wired with a second set of coax cable, and that's if you do want to add, an HD dish. If a unit wasn't ordered with solar, it is pre-wired for solar. Renegade does a great job of pre-wiring everything, because the hardest part of adding a dish or adding a satellite panel or a solar panel is getting the wires there. Once the wires are there, it's not that big of a deal. So we talked about the 9-inch super sandwich floor that Renegade builds on their units. When you're looking at coaches, whether it be, to me, I'm very partial to Renegade, but other brands, if you look, if we get down here, see if I can sit. If you get down here, I'm sitting at the coach door, this right here is the bottom of the floor. And what Renegade does, most manufacturers either mount their walls sitting on top of the floor or bolted to the side of the floor, glued and whatnot. Well, when it's bolted or glued to the side, you got sagging issues over time. And if it's on top of the floor, like Dynamax, the floor has a potential to do this back and forth over the years in the sway and become loose or cause cracking or what nature. Well, Renegade's floor, once the floor is 9 inches thick. So you got all that real estate to mount the wall to, and then Renegade has a steel channel that sticks out, and so that 2-inch wall can rest on top of that and be secured to the floor itself to the side. So very well thought out. There's very few manufacturers that do that, especially when I get into some really high-end units. So what you can do anytime you're looking at a coach, if you look in here and you can feel, the bottom of the floor, and then you go right inside coach door. So up here is the top of the floor. And if you go down, so you do this on any coach trailer, you can just go inside the door, top of the floor. If we look at my hand, we're going to go down, 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 down. That is the bottom of the Renegade floor. So 9 inches, huge. You go into some of these coaches and it's like top of the floor, bottom of the floor. I think in my unit it's like 3/4 of an inch maybe. It's just not much material there. But there's a lot of limitations on the type of chassis. When you get into the Mercedes chassis, the thing only holds 11,000 pounds. You got limitations there. Which another big advantage of the Super Cs, they're built the whole weight. We used like on the M2 truck chassis, that's the same chassis we're using for building fire trucks, aerial booms, dump trucks. I've been doing this for a long time. I've built all kinds of stuff over the years. So the wall on the exterior and in the roof, it's 2 inches thick. It's a vacuum bonded aluminum tube structure, 1-piece fiberglass on the exterior, same thing on the top, 1-piece fiberglass on the top, Asdel interior. Now, nothing in the walls or the ceiling can rot. You can get water damage if something you poked a hole or hit something, but technically it can't rot or deteriorate. There's some furring strips in the roof. I'll be honest, there's some furring strips up there to hold the ceiling up, but structurally there is nothing to rot that would degrade. Just go with me on that. That would cause the coach to fall apart by any means. It's a 30-year coach. Now, when I talk about the vacuum bonded solid fiberglass exterior, there's other manufacturers that can say that exact same marketing lingo: vacuum bonded tube structure. Not specifying whether it's steel or aluminum. Fiberglass 1-piece, right? Well, the fiberglass on a Renegade, thicker than 1/4, if not close to 1/4 inch. Fiberglass on some of the competitors' product that say the exact same thing, it's a sheet of paper. You can roll it. So, you get on the roof of some of these other units and you can see the ribs going across. It's like, oh boy, because I have to get up on the roof for trades and make sure everything looks good and no water damage or whatnot. And it's like, I hope I make it off of here. But so aluminum, so that's the example. When you're buying a Renegade, hands down, you're taking a lot of pride in how they build a box. It's not about, to me, it's cool to have fireplaces and electrical systems and apps that control everything on the coach, which these do. To me, it's, being a coach owner, it's just nice to have that structural quality and knowing that it's something I'm going to get to enjoy for a long time. And and of course with that 9-inch floor, just the ride quietness. Even a lot of people go, well, that unit's also built on a Freightliner M2. Well, I tell you right now, you take a cardboard box built on a Freightliner M2 and you take a Renegade built on an M2 or an S2 chassis, it's going to ride and handle different, even though they're technically close. The chassis is the same. It's because of the box, because those chassis are built and designed knowing that they're going to get something put on them down the road. This slide in the rear, it uses the Swintex system. The biggest thing on the Swintex system, you'll hear some bad press about Swintex, and that's because manufacturers use the Swintex system on slides that are too darn big. Renegade does not do that. The biggest thing with the Swintex systems to keep them in sync is you need to run the slides all the way out until the motors stop working on their own. You'll hear them cut out because that motor will hit a resistance point, it'll spike the voltage, it'll just cut off. Same thing coming in. That keeps them nice and sync. But a lot of people don't understand is those Swintex systems have motors that are up inside the track there, and you can slide the gears up out of there, and you can actually manually push these slides in. Well, motors spin based on voltage, so in theory, both motors are getting 12 volts, let's say. Well, due to wire length and other variables, one motor might be getting point something voltage more, causing it to turn a hair faster, a hair slower. So if you're not running your slide all the way out and all the way in, over time they can get out of sync. Whereas if you run them all the way in and all the way out, each motor is cutting off when it hits that voltage peak. Only use dry silicone lubes. Renegade, I think they use the CRC lube. That's the only lube you need for your coach, is a dry silicone spray. Your hitches, your steps, your tracks. You don't need any greasy stuff to use on this coach. That stuff just attracts dirt. And then before we go into the coach, so on your big slides, they use a rack and pinion system. So on the big slide, they use this rack and pinion system, and in the middle you've got a bar there, which there's a motor midship underneath the coach that you can access by crawling underneath there. If you ever had to manually crank it in, I have yet to hear the story where somebody had to manually crank in their slide, but it is doable. A 3/4 inch gear wrench would be ideal, and a lot of beverages to go with it because that motor is geared super low, and I've done it for fun just to see what it would take. And you crank and crank and crank and crank and crank, and it's doable. Another thing that comes up is there's where the bolt meets here, there's a gap. Well, the reason there's a gap there, it's not meant to be tight, is so that when the motors start to pull the slide in, it has a chance for the motor to ramp up before it actually catches and pulls the weight of the slide, and so it's not just instantly loaded. So that's normal, because I see that commonly come up as well. All right, we'll head in. So we'll head into the coach here. Love the fact that they've done this where it goes underneath. Immediately as you walk in your coach, place to store your shoes. There's a company, I forget what it's called, but they make these really cool like mats you can put on your steps, and that's some kind of sand matter prickly thing where it basically collects a lot of the sand and dirt. It works really well. I use them on my coach to keep tracking even less dirt and stuff into your coach. And then to the left here, you have your battery disconnect switch, which is for your coach. We call them salesman switches because that's usually the only person that ever uses them. We have electric here, so we just keep coaches plugged up and charged and ready to show customers. If you got it in storage and you don't have access to electricity, or the solar can't do its job, you're going to want to cut that on and off. But I highly recommend, if you're going to invest this kind of money in a motorhome, plan ahead on where you're going to store it, and I have at least a 15 amp circuit to keep your batteries nice and healthy, especially if stored inside of a building. Your entry step override, that way that when you're camped, every time you open the door, it's not, your steps aren't going in and out, they'll just stay out unless you start the engine. And then of course your e-start switch. The e-start switch is what ties your chassis battery bank and your coach battery bank together, so that if you've killed one or the other, you can use that to jump start the generator or the main chassis engine. And of course, required by fire marshals are a fire extinguisher. And then as we walk up here, let me close the door behind me. I actually got some heat going in here. So as we walk up in here to the coach, you've got one of your touch panels for the Firefly system, the Vega Touch. The way to look at these is they are basically remote controls that are mounted to the wall. They're not a hardwired. This is not hardwired to that light. It sends a radio signal to the main control panel. And some coaches have, this one, for example, has 2 control panels in it. So that's the way to look at those. So when you're troubleshooting, if you have any issues, one, is this going to get power? Anytime the main control panels can't see one of the remotes, it just assumes low battery. Technically, this could be broke. I've seen it at least once, or something wrong with it. It's got circuitry in it. But so when you hit, like, let's see, all interior off, that turned green. That tells me that I got a successful signal over to the control panel. All interior on, same thing. And of course, extend, retract, and some other functions here. But that's just basically, I mean, this will come off the wall. See if I can do it without breaking anything. And those two wires, that's just 12 volt. So if, it's possible that some of these in the coach will have a battery on the back of them, depending on where they're located, and they wouldn't be 12 volt hardwired. One thing I have seen on some of the coaches is these have a hard time, like they'll want to pop off. All you need to do is pull this off and loosen those screws a little bit behind there, and that way this padded wall is not pushing on it so hard and causing it to pop off. Easy fix. It's just whoever screwed it on there may have put the screws in a turn too tight. Easily done. Of course, you've got a TV up above your coach door. Of course, you've got a screen door. You can pull down on this, and this TV does come out and swing away. Just keep in mind that you now are could nail your head when you're walking in if you're looking down and not up. All wood, all hardwood cabinetry. Renegade puts together this really nice owner's book that you can look at. It's got all your componentry, model numbers, serial numbers, so that's really handy. So, Renegades come with a 1-year warranty, but a lot of your appliances or other stuff may have, additional warranty. So, if you have an issue outside that first year, go to check that your refrigerator or microwave or something's not covered by an extended coverage, from that actual manufacturer. And in the bag up here, you'll see in all the coaches, it's got like chassis information as far as Freightliner goes. Of course, you've got day-night shades. Single basin sink. You got a GFI outlet down here, and if I'm correct, the GFI is actually tied into the circuit breaker. We can look. So it's a ground fault breaker. Of course, above your convection microwave is your entertainment center for your TV in your living room. Blu-ray player, a place where you would hook up your satellite box and any other entertainment stuff that you want to have going to your TV. It could be a Nintendo Switch or Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. And of course, up here on your Winegard, this is your power on and off for your amplifier for your TV over the air, and then of course the Wi-Fi system. That's green right now, which means we're amplifying for over the air. If you're hooked up to cable at an RV park, that needs to be off for that to work. That's a common issue that comes up. Of course, your convection microwave, so it'll basically bake or microwave. If anything in this entire coach did a rattle, possibly that tray right here. A lot of times if I'm doing a test drive with somebody, I can simply remove this and there's no rattling inside the coach at all. I mean, I don't know what I got my finger stuck. I don't know what you want me to do. I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it. Boy, I didn't know if I was gonna get my fingers back. Of course, you've got glass tile, backsplash. That little slot back here is so that you can put these pieces in there if you want to. Keep them out of the way. And then, of course, you've got your propane stove. The Valencia is a propane unit as far as your heat in your stove, cooktop, but then your refrigerator is all electric. Refrigerators are just too efficient, really, not to do all electric. I don't see a big need, especially with a unit this big with the biggest, the battery system size. And I've seen people expand their battery systems on these Renegade products. So this is your Firefly system, and then basically you know, so real simple system to use. So there's your home screen, master light on off. There's your temperatures for the front of the coach, rear of the coach, all your tank levels, tank heaters, water pump, house voltage, chassis voltage. Keep in mind on your voltages, that's like a rough idea. I mean, depending on what you've got running, what lights are on, water pump, it could fluctuate that voltage. So it's just giving you kind of like a rough idea. I mean, it's not the only way to get a true voltage off of a battery is to use a battery shunt. It's measuring the voltage as it's coming in and out, and then figuring out what you've got left, or to disconnect everything from a battery and put a meter on it to see what it's reading. But that gives you a rough idea. Of course, generators start and stop with your hours. The generators do need to be serviced at 50 hours, and then 150 hours. At 150 hours every service after that. I always service mine once a year. That's a personal preference, no matter how many hours I put on it. But I do try to run my generator at least once a month for 30 minutes, fully loaded. There's your in-motion satellite, enabled to turn it on. Of course, all your light controls. Everything with an up and down arrow is dimmable. Here's your electrical system. This shows your power source, which right now we're on generator auto, and then line 1, line 2. Of course, your transfer switch, breaker box, inverter, charger. AGS. Inverter right now is on pass-through, which means that, you know, we're getting power from shore or the generator, so that means the electricity is going to pass, whatever runs off the inverter, it's just going to pass through the inverter onto that appliance or system. AGS is auto gen start. That allows you to set your generator to automatically start based on triggers, which in this case is low battery or HVAC load. Every time you put the key in the ignition, it'll disable auto gen start because it doesn't know where you're parking it. You don't want your generator firing up in an enclosed garage and fumigating everybody, and possibly could be deadly. I mean, so carbon monoxide. But so you've got quiet hours. You got the quiet hours start and stop. So if you're at a place where they have generator restrictions, you can set that so it doesn't fire up. The minimum run time, you typically don't want a generator to fire up and just shut back down. You want to run for a little bit and exercise before you shut it off. The maximum run time, and then of course the generator restart tries. The reason for that is the generator doesn't know how much fuel is in the tank, so you don't want it to just sit there and try to crank over and over and over again, and it's not picking up any fuel. Once you get below quarter tank, roughly, the generator should stop starting. Of course, your bathroom fan up and down speeds. Slide controls, so you know, and of course your window shade for the Cabover bunk, front slide, extend and retract. You can go into your leveling system. You can manually put jacks up and down on the 4 corners. I've actually used my jacks to change out to help. I had to have a valve stem replaced, and the place I had stopped at a Walmart in Michigan. It was in the middle of nowhere, and that's all there was. It was open, and they could do my valve stem, but they didn't have a jack tall enough. So I used my jacks to pick up that tire so they could change out the valve stem. But and then if you put a key in the ignition, it's going to lock all of the slide functions, so you won't be able to put slides in or out. And then of course your settings page. Obviously for quiet time, you need to make sure your time is correct. The clean mode is just you push that and that turns the display off, so you can clean it for, I think it's 10 seconds, 15 seconds, so you're not pushing any buttons. Of course, screen brightness. And then if you want to set up your app, you go there's your QR code, there's your ID, there's your PIN. And then of course you got network diagnostics, so you just show you if there's any fault codes or any issue. And then you've also got your outputs. Really awesome. I mean, you can see all your 12 volt stuff, and you can see what's getting power and what's not. There's your inputs, air conditioner status, vent fans. You know, it's in the motorhome world, it's pretty good to get savvy about a lot of this stuff. I mean, just save yourself a lot of headache if you're somewhere where it's not easily accessible to have a tech or somebody look at your motorhome, or you don't want to have to drive it somewhere and leave it overnight. So the more you can do on your own, the better. So down here below the stove, we've got our breakers and fuses. There's a diagram over here for the control panel. And of course your roadside assistance for the 1 year. 12 volt fuses up here, nothing too fancy. Now what's really neat here is if you look to the far left, it says inverter output. So what that tells you is everything on that panel is run by the inverter. So your batch EFI, your washer, your microwave, your kitchen, outside entertainment center, subwoofer, refrigerator, AV, TV, the TV in the cap. So I mean that it tells you everything inverter runs. Everything that's down here is going to require shore power or the generator to be running. So for example, your front and rear air conditioners, dryer. Of course, you've got cabinetry, you've got a waste bin down there. Your drawers. There's your whole house water filter, some paint samples, your remotes. Renegade does give you a can of the power lube from CRC. You got a storage area up here by the refrigerator. That valve in the back left-hand corner, that is the shut-off for your ice maker. You've got a transit lock here, so we can pull this open. There's your ice maker. Nice thing about a residential refrigerator, you've got more room for stuff to store. When you get into the propane dual fuel fridges, they got more mechanisms in the back of them, so that takes up real estate of the actual fridge itself. Your back wall's not as far back, so you can see you got tons of storage inside of this fridge. And then of course right here we've got our Splendid washer and dryer. There's your washer down there. And when you guys you buy a coach from us, we test all these systems right before delivery. And not before. Some people like well, we'll just do the we'll do the pre-delivery inspection when it gets in from the factory. No. We do that right before you take delivery, so that if there was anything that could have happened while it was here, we address those issues. We want to definitely increase the chances of your first trip out being a lot of fun. Of course, you got your bunk beds. What's really cool about Renegade is the bunk beds are 6'6", not like the industry standard of basically 6 foot. So you can actually put a full-size adult or your taller children there. Each bunk, we've ordered them with the TVs in them. Of course, you got an outlet, USB, and a light. Privacy curtains. And then, on the thing on the bunk beds, this middle bunk, this actually lifts out, so you can actually you can put a closet rod in there and turn it into a full-size closet. Or I've seen people, they'll pull the pad, they'll take that out and they'll rebuild a whole new thing in here. And I've seen people turn these into kennels and even an office. So people get a little creative. Depends on what your exact needs are. Of course, the entertainment system below, which is for your TV in your bedroom. And then you've got your wardrobe here to the left of the TV. Of course, this panel down here lifts out, so if you're going to hang longer dresses or suits. Not sure what kind of motorhome you're doing if you need long dresses. Well, I guess long dress is legit. Same thing, another wardrobe. Only the left-hand side's got the option for the longer. And then you've got drawer storage. Cabinet storage here. Another long drawer at the bottom. That's that hanging cabinet we had there. Another touch panel back here. That Firefly system there is identical to the one up front. I mean, there's no difference. It's just another point. So what we learned a couple years ago was when you got the touch panel on the front of the coach and there's a refrigerator up there, the refrigerator causes interference on the radio frequencies. So any of the touch panels that were back here on the opposite side of the refrigerator would have intermittent issues with the communication. And so Renegade on a lot of the coaches, depending on where the refrigerator is placed, they put a panel on the rear of the coach and a panel on the front of the coach so they can get away from that interference from the refrigerator. Of course, you got a nice mirror across the back, cabinetry across the top of your bed. Touch panels up here. One of them, of course, is a generator start. All lights on and off. The multiplex wiring with where you can turn all your lights off and on from one point is awesome because, you can lay down in bed. It's like, I'll let the light in the front. And then you just reach up there and hit all lights off. Time to go snoozing. So on the 38BB, you do have some storage underneath of the bed. And then there's your 2 75-gallon roto molded water tanks. They do it in 2 separate tanks to minimize the slosh when you're driving down the road. And then of course your water pump is in there. We check all that stuff at delivery for, you know, the pressure to make sure everything is set correctly. And then there's a clear hose down there, which is what you can use for winterizing. So you literally can put a 5-gallon bucket of antifreeze back here, put your clear hose in there, flip your valve over, and then when you go to turn on the water pump, it's pulling directly from the 5-gallon bucket of antifreeze, or 1-gallon jug if you want to do it that way. I recommend just dumping it into a 5-gallon bucket, and then it's pulling antifreeze throughout the whole coach to winterize. And then of course you've got that big T-handle down there. That's to dump the fresh water out of the coach. You know, all your fresh water is inside of the coach, so as long as the coach is being heated, you don't have to worry about your freshwater stuff freezing. One of the things that gives me a lot of peace of mind, I love the Govee Bluetooth sensors that are for temperature and humidity, temperature being a little more important. They make Wi-Fi ones too if you want to go that route, but I put them like in my control bay, underneath the coach, next to my water tanks, so I can keep monitoring. You know, if I get into, you know, because I travel all over the country and I snowboard and stuff too, so I'm not always just chasing 70 degree, so I can keep an eye on temperatures like my control bay. And you can even set alerts. So if you can set an alert that if it starts to drop below a certain temperature, hey, you're getting close to that freeze point, and you can address those things if you get into some real, I mean, I've been in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and one day, I mean, I went from, you know, the average temperature for the day was 70 degrees. We moved into the Black Hills of South Dakota, and there was a weather came through. It's like 7 degrees within, you know, less 20, you know, 24-hour difference. So like went from 70 to 7 in just a short period of time, just because of altitude and stuff. So I had to get, you know, I actually on that trip I just solved my problem. I hung a work light. I had electricity, so I just hung a work light in the bay down there, and the bulb itself from just a 70-watt light bulb kept my bay warm enough to keep stuff from freezing. Of course, your toilet, it's got an eco mode, a normal mode, and of course your empty. You know, this is a macerator toilet, so it does grind down what's going to your black tank and then pumps it there, so you'll have very little issues with odor. Of course, you got cabinet storage over here, an outlet. That's not a fake door, it's a real door. You've got water shutoffs down there for the sink, and of course you could put some storage down there as well. You got a cabinet up here to the left. And then of course you got your medicine cabinet here, which has got tons of storage in it. And then you got your shower. The shower head is adjustable up and down that depending on the height of the person. That is a quick on and off switch, so if you are dry camping and want to minimize the amount of water you're using, you can easily shut your water on and off so that you're not just wasting water. 150 gallons is a lot, so that's awful nice. One thing Renegade started doing quite a long time ago now is they put that access panel below there you can take off. That's just nice. So once a year, you know, you want to have your roof inspected, but then you also want to check other points too. And underneath the shower is a great spot. I mean, these are rolling earthquakes when you're driving down the road, and depending on how adventurous you get. And I mean, I've seen a Super C on the rim of the Grand Canyon, on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, out in the national forest, where you can just boondock. Them roads are rough. I mean, like, they're washboarders all. When I was there, they were washboarders all get out. So I can only imagine that guy driving down the road and just beating that coast to death. So that's a good access point to look underneath. You don't see any water, no dripping or any signs of like water stains. At least once a year, no different than checking your roof and a lot of the other stuff on your coach. Stuff that we can go over during delivery. Of course, you've got your dinette that does make a bed. There's a lever underneath that unlocks it, and then the best thing to do to put these down, the trick is to push down in the middle of the table. That way it goes down nice and smooth. If you try to push on the end of the table, it has a tendency to bind it and flex it against the wall. The cushions that go, that's about 3x5 when it makes a bed. The cushions that go underneath are in these drawers down here. I tell most people, if they have no intentions of ever using this as a bed, take the cushions out and use that for storage. All the RV manufacturers now really are opposed to people rear facing in a coach. So you will not have seat belts there, but you do have seat belts here for 2, and then you've got seat belts for 2 here as well. So technically in the coach you can belt 6. To each their own. I mean, I know what I do depending on where I'm at. But most states, if you're sitting in the cab of the truck, you got to have a seatbelt. Seatbelt laws apply. If you're back here, not most states technically they don't. I don't want to get in a legal battle here, but I mean that's most states is typically how it works. I use common sense. If I'm cruising down the highway and it's straight as an arrow and it's in the desert, and I'm not as anal about it. But if it's Atlanta, or going through Miami, yeah, everybody needs to be sitting down and buckled up. Of course, you've got storage up here as well. That's your third cushion that makes that into a bed over there at the dinette. I'd put that in the back against the wall. It's less likely to slide out that way. Once again, all things. Walk-arounds usually, depending on how experienced a person is at delivery, walk-arounds usually take anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours. Just really depends on how much experience they have. Up here at the top, you've got your 15,000 BTU heat pump. Just real quick, so you can open up these vents and the air just blows straight down, just dumps, right? Well, these are ducted. So, and what's really cool about Renegades is the condensation. These have condensation pumps, and it's actually plumbed to underneath the coach. So you don't get that water runoff off the coach with all the streaking. I hate that. Looks terrible. So it's actually plumbed to underneath. And of course, you got a 15,000 BTU unit in the rear, which is plumbed as well. And then, of course, all your ducted work where you can actually evenly push all your air throughout the coach. These technically can heat. But I mean, if it's below 55, I would stick to using your furnace, or just use your furnace in general. If you're somewhere that's got electric hookup, I know people that use those Dyson heaters. I know people that use just a basic ceramic heater that's $15. These coaches are super well insulated. I mean, it's a high density foam insulation. Of course, the wool material that's in the floor. It doesn't take a lot to keep them warm once they're warm. So a simple ceramic filter, radiant heater, if you're hooked up to electric, and that way you're not running these loud heat pumps to keep the coach warm, or a louder furnace, or burning propane when, I don't burn propane unless I have to. I mean, I use an electric heat source if I'm hooked up to electric somewhere. So up here in the front, you got two seats. They are air ride. They do conjust fore and aft, tilt back and forward. The armrests are adjustable as well. They do swivel around to the rear of the coach. I don't feel like a ton of people use that feature. It sounds like an awesome feature, but maybe in a bunk bed model more likely, because you might be camping with more people, but not as common as I would think. At least I have swivel seats in my coach, and I thought, that'd be so cool. I use swivel seats all the time. I couldn't tell you the last time I swiveled my seats around. But this is a truck chassis, so when you turn the key on, you'll let all your gauges swipe, all your lights and stuff will come on and then go back off. If the wait to start lamp comes on, let it go off. Any of the engine lights that are yellow, those are precautionary. And the engine ECM is doing over 2,000 operations per second. So things happen. You get glitches, lights may come on. If it's yellow and you don't hear, see, feel anything different about the way the coach is running, keep driving. I mean, if it was major, it'd let you know. So whereas you do have red engine lights and stop engine lights and possible derate conditions as well, get off the road as soon as it's safe. So I mean, if you can pull over and it's safe, get off the road if a red light comes on. Those codes that trigger a red light are associated to catastrophic engine failure. A really simple example of that: you blow a radiator hose, you dump all your coolant, you're going to get thrown a catastrophic engine code because you lost the coolant, which keeps the block cool and from blowing up. So no different than if oil levels get super low, you're going to throw a red engine light. Electronic shifter for the Allison transmission. So reverse, neutral, and drive. That's the mode button you push to put it in mode. On the Valencia, the mode puts it into performance, like I said. That shifts 200 RPM later. Basically, that allows your horsepower to continually increase while you still maintain peak torque. Whereas, in theory, the faster you shift, the more fuel efficient. I had a friend of mine who delivers a lot of RVs for me. He's retired from the Fayette County school system. I said, hey, he's driving to Texas in a Verona. I said, just for fun, drive a whole tank and performance in a whole tank and economy. And that was leaving from Kentucky to Texas. And he told me he came up with like 0.2 of a mile difference. At that point, I would just drive in performance because it's peppier. It's easier to drive, getting down the exit, on the on-ramps and getting into traffic. It's just a lot easier. You do have an exhaust brake, which that on-off switch is right here. Of course, power locks, windows up and down. The button allows you to switch your trailer feed from the truck to the trailer if you're doing so. If you've got a camera inside of a trailer or on the back of a trailer. Of course, your docking lights on the rear, and then the connection point for the radio. So your 3.5 jack and your USB. I apologize if the video footage isn't the greatest with the sun shining through here. Of course, your HVAC controls. You got a power outlet here. This is your air suspension dump. One thing to think about, so you can dump the air suspension on the rear of the coach. All vehicles are nose down in the front, and that's for aerodynamic purposes. So if you back into a campsite and you're already rear end high, right? Because that's how they build vehicles. Well, if and of course if the site's got slope to it, you're even more rear end high. So if you dump the air in the rear, you're bringing your rear down some first, so that when you go to level, your jacks aren't doing near the work to level the coach out. But that could also be to your advantage. You back into a site and it's front end high, right? So you back in, the rear end's already a little bit higher than the front anyways. You back in, well, now your front's up kind of closer with that, and now your jacks don't have to do near as much work. So you just got, that's something you can use to your advantage. Most of the time, it's to your advantage to dump your rear suspension to get the rear end closer down level with the front. Any of you people out there that have done leveling kits on like pickup trucks or Jeeps know what I'm talking about. Of course, your Garmin radio system. Now, you can, and I have now seen on the Facebook Renegade group, someone has done this. You can buy additional screens from Garmin, get mounting kits, like to put another screen up top here or hang it from up here underneath. That actually, so you can basically take the functionality of the screen, which is detachable. They make a 7-inch, an 8-inch, and a 10-inch, I believe, or an 8 and a 10, something of that nature. But you can take these and you can mount another one up here, and the only thing that you can't take from here and put into another display is your camera feed, unless you actually run wiring up to wherever that other monitor is going to be located. But if you want to take this and put it up here, and that's what you use for your source for like navigation, and then you got your camera down here full time, totally doable. I'm actually going to try to steal some I asked permission. I'm going to steal some information from one of the Renegade people and post some of the parts and stuff that they used to put that unit into their coach. Even though the leveling system is built into the coach, you do have a control panel up here that allows you to level and unlevel the coach or run jacks up and down independently. Your regen button, I doubt you'll ever have to regen your motorhome. That's required. We have to have those in the commercial truck world or in the diesel world on this size of a vehicle. And the people that need those are the people that like school buses where they idle around town all day delivering kids, and then they don't ever get up to speed long enough to actually regen on their own to burn out the particulate out of the particulate filter. And so they got to do a park regen where they push the button and let it idle up and sit and do a regen for 20-30 minutes. You'll never have to do that, but the button is there and you know what it's for. There's a lot more I can talk about the dash and engine stuff, and that's kind of my specialty and kind of how we got involved in the Renegade world. They know us, the truck guys are pretty savvy on all that stuff, so we can talk a lot about it. You do have an air horn up there, so choose to use that wisely. I've been working in like I said, for trucking business for 16 years, and you're walking the lot and somebody's sitting in a truck and you don't realize it. It's one of your employee buddies, and they can't wait for you to walk right in front of you there and blow the horn. I've had to jump a few times. Of course, your standard city horn.